My name is Dave Kerzner. I've done sounds for IQ Multimedia for many years, and I've been part of it. But I'm also a music artist myself. I do progressive rock. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, and I did a record called, it's a solo record called New World under my name. And I was very fortunate to have one of my dear friends, Tom Lord-Alge, mix one of the songs on the record for me. Now, Tom is a world-renowned mixing engineer, producer. He's worked with Steve Winwood, Coldplay, Dave Matthews Band, Weezer, and countless others, multi-Grammy winning engineers. So we're fortunate to have him here. So Tom Lord-Alge, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
And I just want to briefly, we're going to get into some really interesting stuff where we pull apart this mix that he did with my song Stranded, which is a long progressive rock piece. It features Durga McBroom, who was just here, a longtime singer with Pink Floyd, Steve Hackett from Genesis, Jason Sheff from the band Chicago, the former lead singer, and Nick DiVirgilio on drums, if you know some of these great musicians. And so it was a very big track, 11 minutes long. And what Tom has done for us here is we did this in 2014 before T-RackS 5 existed and before he was getting fully into T-RackS, which he now is. So we replaced, or Tom replaced, at length worked to replace all the tracks that he used different plugins from different manufacturers or hardware with his SSL console, and did it all with T-RackS. And so we have that session. We'll be talking about that and pulling up tracks.
And all in the box. So I mean, I removed it from it being stemmed, or not stemmed out, but from it being actually a hardware piece that shows up on my 72 input console. We moved it so that it was in the box, and the majority of it, well, actually all of it now is using T-RackS plugins. And the funny thing was when I played it and they AV'd the two mixes, I was shocked. I'm like, wow, we should put this one out. It sounds so much better.
Yeah, and so, you know, Tom's had a lot of experience now with the brand new T-RackS 5. I just want to briefly tell you about T-RackS. T-RackS started the first version in 1999. It was actually the very first analog modeling mastering station. It was before plugins were out. And since then, various versions have come out till now we're at version 5 with a brand new interface. We have expandable GUI where you can make it larger and smaller. You have all sorts of new modules. There's 38 different models of analog gear, compressors, EQ, de-essers, brick wall limiters, pretty much everything you need for mixing and mastering. Some of the new modules, well, there's 4 new modules. One is called Master Match. This is a really cool module for a plugin for analyzing someone's song. Let's say you're mastering and you want the sound, both some of the dynamics and the EQ, the tonal qualities and the dynamics of a song to be applied to your song. So that's what it does. It analyzes a song, you put in whatever, Dark Side of the Moon. You go, I really love Alan Parsons the way he mentioned, and I want to apply this to my song. It won't do everything, but it'll give you some of that. And also it's a good educational, just to analyze things and see what other records sound like dynamically and
so EQ-wise. You play a song through it, it takes it, it analyzes it, it shows you the curve, the equalization curve of that song, and then it would apply that to whatever you put it in. So again, for me, of course, I always used to start by listening to Pour Some Sugar on Me by Def Leppard. It was always the first thing I'd listen to because it gave my ears an opportunity to hear a kind of what the room sounded like and what the monitoring was like. So that told me what the top end should be and the bottom end should be. So from now on, I'm going to take Pour Some Sugar on Me, put it through that, and then just put that on my mix, and then walk away. And with any luck, I'll have that great curve.
Sure. Well, actually, it's interesting. There's another plug-in there called One. And the one is right there, and we'll show it to you in actual action. But between Master Match and One, you have these great mastering tools in addition to Lursen Mastering Console, which is eventually going to be part of T-RackS, but it's on as a standalone. So you have all these mastering tools. And Tom, you used to use the TC Finalizer sometimes when you need to just make a quick mastering from your mix for clients.
Yeah, I would actually just run it through a TC Electronics Finalizer.
Right.
But now that I've come across this, you know, I'm beginning to use this I've actually pulled the TC Electronics Finalizer out of my rack, and now this becomes my kind of mastering piece.
Great. So this is just these are cool ideas, things if you're a mix engineer or producer, and you could, for instance, my new record, not this one, I had Lurson mastering, Gavin Lurson and Reuben Cohen master my previous record that we were going to play. That was 2014. My new record that was released last year, I used the Lurson mastering console software, and Gavin's no longer my friend, but that's okay. No, but if you're on a budget and you want to master it yourself, or even if you're going to go to a mastering house, but like Tom, where a client wants to hear, or a record label or something wants to hear how it would sound done. Hey, how you doing? You put yourself out of business. No, I'm kidding.
No, well, as you know, the artist, they kind of want to hear the finished product. So for me as a mixer, it's important to me to send it out as close to sounding completely finished, and that includes the mastering process. Now, obviously, I have a second rig that I print at a higher resolution that I would not have that effect on, to allow a mastering engineer to do his job. You know what I mean? But again, when I send out listening copies for clients, sometimes it's nice to be able to kind of put the mastering on it already. And again, I have to be honest, with some of these plugins, especially the one, there's no reason you can't use that plugin and master that, be your master. It's that freaking good.
So you have a host of mastering EQs and compression and different tools that can also be used for the mix, and it's actually kind of nice to have. There's another new one that I really like called the Dynamute, which is a model of the very popular Verimute. And it's just a real high-end mastering compressor limiter. And then there's also another new one, which I really like, called Equal. And this is, first of all of this you can just download for free and try out for a week or two yourself for free, for fun. Just use it on your mix even. There's nothing, no beeps or no static or anything. So EQ, what it does is you can graphically pull the frequencies that you want, and then you can choose different curves that are modeled after different popular EQs. So this is kind of like a hybrid, and it's an invention from IK Multimedia, as is the One. So in general, the modules, there's 38 modules in T-RackS 5 now, and you can buy them a la carte with our custom shop system. So you can literally download a fully working T-RackS CS, which is a custom shop, and it gives you some of these tools in there, and then you can just custom shop, buy whatever you want, or you can buy the T-RackS Max, which comes with everything, which I recommend, because when you have T-RackS Max, we also give you for free presets, engineer presets from Tom Lord-Alge, from Nick Davis, who produces Genesis, from Dave Way, who's worked with Sheryl Crow and many other artists, and we have more coming from different engineers, and these are free for T-RackS users. So you can have a starting point chain that Tom would use on vocals or different instruments. And so why don't we, since we have Tom here, first of all, let's give it up again for Tom Lord-Alge. And let's talk about this session.
Thank you.
And what you use to process instruments.
Yeah, so briefly, again, this was a session that I did in 2014. And I decided to take all the other manufacturers' plugins out and redo the mix using all T-RackS 5. And again, the outcome, I was very surprised. One, at how great the T-RackS 5 plugins are. I've been using the T-RackS 4 for a little bit of time, but obviously the T-RackS 5 just came out. I was shocked at how great that they are, but I was also shocked at some of the features that opened up a whole new creative opportunity for me, and that I utilized in this particular mix. So what we have on this mix on the screen that we're looking at right now is the drum set. And as you can see, it's all fives. So we have 5, 10, 15, 20. No. But these are all T-RackS plugins. So first, let's start with just playing a bit of the song so that you can hear what the song like. Why don't we just cut right? You want us to play it from the top?
No, we can.
Yeah, just play from the top. We'll play it for a minute so that you can hear what we're talking about. So again, this is all from within the box. There's no console trickery. This is all in the box. again, all done. We're going to stop it right there. And let's just start with the drums because, well, first of all, you guys want to know what I put on the drums? Yeah? Because the drums sound kick-ass. It's one of the reasons I came out into the house. I wanted to hear it and make sure that what you guys were hearing was what I was hearing when I did it in the studio, and it is. So normally, I'm not a side chain or a drum bus kind of guy because I'm mixing on a console. How I mix is spank the individual instruments. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, the way that I hear things and the way that I compress, I don't need to do side chaining because I'm adding so much freaking compression to begin with. But on this particular track, I wanted to try to do a little bit of bus compression on the drum set. So before we start going through the different instruments, let's take a look at the bus compressor. Would you like to do that? Yeah, that sounds great. So as you can see, I have the whole entire drum set coming down bus 1 and 2, and then I have the drum sub on 1 and 2. Okay, and on this, as you can see, I'm using the T-RackS 5 Classic Equalizer. Okay, and I'm just using it in left-right mode. And to be quite honest, all that I'm doing is adding, you know, a nice bit of kind of woof in the 60 range, in the 60 cycle range, shelved, and the same thing at the top end. I'm adding that kind of Pioneer loudness curve. Who remembers those old Pioneer stereos that had the loudness button? I mean, I remember growing up, I always just thought that was the best thing. I always wanted my mixes to sound like that loudness button was always turned on. So that to me is kind of simulating that. So that's the whole drum set. So we're adding, you know, 4 dB roughly at 5 or 6K, and then 3 dB roughly in that nice bottom on the drum set. But then after that, I go into a bus compressor. So this is the T-RackS 5 bus compressor, and this is modeled after the solid state Logic 4000 stereo or quad bus. But you'll notice on this that it has something a little bit different than the standard solid state Logic 4000 compressor. It has a grit button. And I can't tell you exactly what the grit button does, but it just makes it sound cool, and it makes it sound different. And these are one of the features that the T-RackS 5 stuff has. It takes the original, and they kind of, or it takes the model, and they kind of make it their own. So they add this grit feature, which again, I don't know exactly technically what it does. I just know that it did something I like that's pleasing. Now, they modeled after a more modern version, which has a sidechain high pass, which I opted to use. So I'm adding compression to the whole drum set, but you can see I'm side chaining the frequency at 500. So pretty much nothing below 500 is getting compressed. So let's play, can you solo the drum set? If you go to kit and just highlight the kit and then solo the drum set, and let's just see, and scroll up to where they're playing. So you can see, you know, I'm only adding a small amount of compression. Let's make the goo a little bigger so that everybody can really see what's going on. Check this out. That's pretty damn cool. That's the other thing. We can make the goo. You can enlarge and make the goo whatever size that you want. But you see, you know, I'm adding a lot of compression at a low ratio. But I'm doing it in a manner that's really just kind of compressing the top end and not the bottom end. So I'm just using it to bring the whole drum set together, okay? So there's my drum sub, and again, I just felt that the drum set needed to have a little bit more spank, and particularly in the mid-range and the top end. Okay. Now, can you go back to that page one more time? That would be the drum bus compressor. So I don't know if any of you have noticed that I have it set up. All of the T-RackS 5 plugins, or the majority of the T-RackS 5 plugins, give you the ability to use them in mono, stereo, or to use them in MS, You're all familiar with MS is? That's mid-side. So you can set it up to either compress or equalize if you're using a stereo channel, just the mid, in other words, the center channel, or you can put it to sides and you can affect or equalize or compress just the side channel. So on this drum set, as you can see, I have it set in MS mode and I have the M highlighted. So all I'm really doing is compressing what's coming out of the center. Because to be quite honest, all I was looking to do was to get a little bit more bite and bark out of the bass drum and snare drum. I really wasn't too concerned with what was going on in the slides. So I'm only using the compressor to literally compress the center. And that's a really cool feature about these plugins. And again, you can hit the side button and adjust it. For me, if I was to wanting to adjust the side, I would like to have and just put another plug-in in and have it do it like that to keep it so it's not confusing for me. But you can probably do it with this one. Okay, so that's the cool feature that I did with this. So again, I'm not compressing left and right, I'm just compressing the center. And again, as I was working, I just thought, wow, this sounds really cool. And I never would have done it, but this gives me the opportunity to do it. It opened up this whole new creative freedom. So just play the drums one more time quickly. It's a reasonable drum sound, correct? You know, if you heard that drum sound, you would believe that Tom Lord-Alge mixed that, right? Okay, well, I mean, I did. I mean, come on. So again, I was just, you know, but the great thing is being a mixer, again, is having the creative and the flexibility to do that. And again, with this particular plugin, it just opened up this whole other thing that I never would have tried. So that kind of covers my drum bus. And now I head over to Dave Kerzner.
Okay. Well, you know, it's really fascinating for me, first of all, working with Tom, because I mixed the rest of my record because I actually don't have the budget that Coldplay has to have Tom do an entire record. But the fascinating thing for me was I just learned a lot. And just working with him, like just seeing how he works and the logic of it. So we thought that it would just be really cool. You know, we don't have a lot of time, and it's like literally you could do like an all-day seminar just talking to Tom about what he uses. But we could maybe go through some of the tracks and just, you know, take a look. Like for instance, let's say the snare, for example. You started with a model of the 1081.
Right. So I mean, I don't know if any of you are familiar with some of the stuff that's been put online, but as to me, the snare is the center of my universe. I base all the timings around the snare drum. So I time align the whole drum set based around the snare drum. So the snare is always the center of my universe. And in this particular song is no exception. This particular song, again, I tried a bunch of different plugins, and this is kind of what I came up with. You know, I started with the T-RackS 5 EQ81, which is, again, a model. Dearly departed, we gather here today to bring holy matrimony to this man and woman and this keyboard. So, I use the T-RackS Neve, modeled after the Neve 10. Am I disturbing you guys over there? No, okay. I just want to make sure because, okay. So, I'm using a T-RackS modeled after the Neve 1081, so which is great. And again, the great thing I'm gonna sound like a broken record with this MS stuff, but again, it allows you the opportunity to do MS stuff. And you're gonna, as we get through this session, you're gonna see some of the stuff that I did that was just side stuff that created this great width. But again, we start with the T-RackS EQ81 model after the 1081. And again, we're just doing normal. Let's bring the goo, let's bring it down and make the goo a little bigger so the blind guys can see it. And I'm one of them. You know, again, so there's nothing unusual here. You know, we're doing a full 15 dB boost at 6K, and that wasn't enough. So again, I add some more in at 4.7, you know, probably another 6 dB. You know, again, and if you click on the knob, it will actually tell you, it actually tells you below it. So it's 10 dB. It's 10 dB of 6.8, 4.3 dB of yada, yada, yada. And again, 180 to add a little bit of bottom. The other cool thing that I like about this is you could run it in mic or line. So if you wanted to get it a little bit grindier or create an interesting effect, you can put the thing in line mode. So, and then what you see is once I've added the EQ, I've trimmed the output to the level that I wanted it at. When I mix, I like to have all my faders at 0. Okay, and what this tells me, when all the faders are at 0, it's really easy to not screw up. Because if you move something, you know it was at 0. And you'll also look, the only channels that have automation read on are channels that I put automation on. If I'm not using any automation, then it shouldn't be on. So in other words, what I do is I make adjustments to the outputs of the channels, you know, to adjust them to where the level I want them. Okay, I've learned over the years that if I adjust the input, which I used to do, it changes the sound of the plugin, whereas the output doesn't. So moving on to, let's go back to the plugin on the snare drum. So again, so we start with the T-RackS 5 model after the 1081, and then we go into one of my personal favorites, which I think these guys just totally freaking nailed this, and they took it to the next level that any of the other companies that make this plugin have missed. So this is the T-RackS 5 Precision Compression Limiter, modeled after the Neve 33609. Countless records, countless hits have gone through that. It's such a great compressor. I love it. I have the hardware units. I use this because I prefer it, and I'm going to tell you why I prefer it. What they've done on this, I always liked the limiter section, okay? And when I was using any of the other manufacturers or hardware unit, in order to get the amount of limiting I wanted, I always used to have the compression in, like it's in now, okay? And you would have the compression set to the lowest threshold so that the compressor circuit didn't kick in. But how this thing is wired is it would go compressor, gain, and then into the limiter. So you'd have to crank the gain up on the compressor to get the limiter to hit the level that you wanted. Well, T-RackS saw that and they figured it out and they put an input on it. They have an input gain, and as you can see, I'm only adding 15 dB a gain on the input. Let's hit play and see what kind of spank we're doing. So again, this is on the snare drum.
You want me to solo just the snare drum, or just?
Yeah, you can solo just the snare. That would be the snare top.
Okay, let me just turn that off. Snare top. Okay.
So that's the live snare. Okay, I have put a gate on it before it came here. I did gate it because, again, I needed to do that. So but as you can see, it's only 8 dB compression. We're not killing anybody here, okay? But I love this plugin. And again, by being able to change the input, so turn the input up and down, turn the input down, and you can see how it changes the level of the limiter. So again, I like to spank that thing hard, and this is just kind of a setting I like to put it at. You can put that back up all the way. So I love this limiter. It works great. It will work great on a stereo bus. It works great on a snare drum. So let's go to the next track, or the next. So after the precision compressor and limiter, I felt that I needed to just remove a little bit of the digital transients, okay? And so many companies out there have come out with tape emulators, you know, or saturation emulators. And again, IK Multimedia is no different. But they have this great one called the Saturator X. Oh, it already sounds like it's going to do something nasty. And I like that. And it gives you the opportunity, again, based on what sound you're looking for, to either use tape emulation, to use console emulation, to use mic pre-emulation, you know, or again, iron if you're in Allentown, or steel if you're in Pittsburgh. No. Basically, again, I'm using the saturator just to take, you know, and I'm using it in a brick wall mode. And as you can see, you know, I have it set up in a manner that it's just going to trim a little bit of the transients off of the snare drum, because I don't want that transient to be triggering any of my limiters down the line. Okay, and then last but not least...
Wait, just one quick thing on that.
Sure.
So just as a tip for using Saturator X, You tend to like to use this to mellow out the transients when you've got a real sharp one from, let's say, the precision limiter. Is that correct?
Correct.
On the snare?
Well,
so
because yes, so the precision limiter, it adds just just a little bit of extra transient to the front of the snare drum. So all I'm using this to do, or I'm using saturator X, is just to control that bit of transients, that bit of tick.
Cool. All right, and then next in the chain.
And then next in the chain, right, so everybody asks me, why are you using a de-esser on the snare drum? Okay, now I don't have the ungated version of this. If I did, I could show you, but if you, first let's play it with it. So you can hear some cymbals in there, you can hear some hi-hat in there. So if you bypass it using the bypass in there, so play that same section again, please. So this is with it bypassed. So you can hear it's kind of an offending, slightly offending frequency of top end from the hi-hat. Now play with it, same section. So you can hear now what it's done is it's reduced it. You know what I mean? So again, the de-esser on the snare drum has always been a trick that I've used with hardware, and again, the T-RackS 5 de-esser does exactly the same thing that I used to do with hardware. So it ducks that spot where it hears that frequency, and then lets the top end come back through for the rest of the snare drum. You know, it's always been one of my little secrets. And so that covers the snare drum. You know, and again, and so if you solo all the snare drums and then the reverb, we might as well, while we're here, would you like to talk about the reverb that we're using on the snare drum?
Yeah.
So I think if you highlight the
snare bottom or
the snare drum, you might be able to solo all the snare drums in one go. You know, if you highlight the
yep.
Okay.
And then oops, no.
No.
But I can just highlight that.
Yep, just highlight the whole enchilada. Okay. So this is the snare drum sandwich. So there are a couple of samples on here. I'm not going to lie. I added some samples to create a sound. But what we're going to focus on is another one of the great T-RackS 5 things that you would get in that package, or that you can get. And this is the CSR, the classic with a K, studio reverb. And this is what I used on the snare. So let's give a listen to that, and then Dave can explain it a little bit better for you. You know, I was shocked at how close this reminded me a bit of my old DRE 2000. So those of you who are familiar with the Lord-Alges know how we covet the Sony DRE 2000. And I'm always looking for something, even though I have DRE 2000s, I still use them. I'm always looking for something that sounds close, because I know one day that thing's going to give up the ghost. So this is my version of the Sony DRE 2000 reverb, you know, this setting. And I was shocked at how good it sounded.
Yeah, the CSR, you get a variety of different types of reverbs, algorithmic based reverbs like the room, a plate, or a hall. And so yeah, it comes in real handy for processing like this. You can run it as an aux. In this case, you actually ran it as an everything bus and then as an insert on the bus, correct? Is that how you're doing it, or is it an aux?
No, this is running on an aux.
This is an aux set. Okay.
This is running on an aux. Yeah, bus 10.
Right, and so that's an option though. And with T-RackS, also you have an interesting thing. What we're doing now, and this is the way Tom works, is inside Pro Tools you have inserts in the actual tracks themselves, but there's a standalone version and a suite, it's called, as a plugin that allows you to set up your own chains with your own assembly, and you can save it back. And this is what we actually did with Tom. So there's, for instance, a preset that already has this inserted, so you could actually get the Tom Lord-Alge snare sound with the reverb already inserted inside T-RackS. So it's sort of like a sub mixing environment, if you will, with you can do it in parallel and series. So that's nice as well.
Yeah, I mean, I use the individual plugins because that's just my flow of working.
Okay. And what else do you want to talk about as far as processing? Should we look at the kick, or?
You can look at the bass drum, absolutely. So bass drum.
This is important.
This is right. This is where I begin to sound like a broken record as we start going through the session and we start talking about the T-RackS 5 British channel. The T-RackS 5 British channel is modeled after the SSL 4000. Of course, anybody that knows me knows I'm a big SSL fan. I have an SSL in my house. It's a 4000G+. I was shocked at how good this particular one sounds. It holds up to any other manufacturer, if not better than any other manufacturer. And it's now my favorite, and I'm going to tell you why that this is my new favorite. The T-RackS did such a great job, and then they took it a step further for two reasons. One, they added the A-B button. Haha, tricked you, didn't I? They added a button up here that you can switch. If you hit it, it goes to the old brown knob E-Series EQ, which was the original SSL EQ. Or if you hit, that's the black knob E-Series SSL EQ. So, and they both have different sounds and different characteristics. And I recommend when you use this plugin to try switch between it. Set it the way that you want, however you want, whether you start with this one or you start with the brown knob, and then switch between the two. Because you'll find that sometimes the brown knob works great on X, Y, and Z, and sometimes the black knob works great on other things. So it's awesome to have that. And then the second thing that they did, which is freaking awesome, is the hard button. Okay? SSL doesn't even have a hard button. Now, I can't tell you what the hell it does. I just know that when I hit it, it makes things sound kind of cool. So on this particular application and on this particular bass drum, I did not use it. But again, a lot of times what I like to do with my settings, I like to set my ratio to infinity to 1. I like to set it to fast attack, and I like to set it to hard. Okay? And as you can see, my preset, how I always start, I like to EQ into the compression. So EQ pre, that makes the EQ section, which is on the top, go into the compression. So I like to EQ into compression. And again, as you can see, I've done a little gain reduction. Okay, so the signal going in was a touch hot, so I turned that down, and then again, I lowered the volume of the output, so again, I could run my channel at 0. So again, this would be on the in mic of the bass drum, and let's take a look at the out mic of the bass drum. And yeah, I mean, as you can see, I'm not subtle with the EQ I'm adding. There's a reason why these things go up to 15, plus 15, you know. And again, if that's not enough EQ, then add more. I mean, it's what we used to do in the old days. You know, on the console, you know, people go, well, why are you turning that up all the way? Because that's it goes all the way. Why not? You know, why aren't you turning it up all the way? So on the out mic, very similar. Except on the out mic, I always do a little trick. I try to get a little bit more of a knocky top end. Okay, but on the out mic, as you can see, on the bass drum out mic, I'm using a fast attack. But again, no real tricks there, you know. But again, that's the T-RackS British channel based on the solid state Logic 4000.
Right, and we also have the white channel, which is based on the 9000
which
series.
Is even more aggressive. So the white channel would be very similar in looking, but it's based on the 9000 series, and it's even more aggressive. So if you really want to get in there and spank it, try the 9000. It's awesome.
Yeah, and one of the things about these different modules is some of them are channel strips, and this is essentially modeling a channel strip from a console, from this E-Series console that Tom has, or G-Series, I guess you have, right?
It's a G+.
And so this particular, just so you know, like we have individual EQs and compressors and gates and things like that, and then this module actually has all-in-one, and just like in the original console, inline dynamics and that you can use along with EQ. So sometimes, and this is an interesting thing with different engineers, and we're discovering this, you know, even more in detail in a hands-on way with the engineer presets that you get, is that sometimes when Tom has mixed countless records, they were done through the console processing, and then, you know, he has all this great fun outboard gear too that's all now modeled with total recall inside his computer when he needs, and he has a hybrid analog digital system and can do either mix entirely inside the box if he wants to, or he can run partially through his console. But to be, you know, I used to have an SSL console for a minute when I rented a studio. Remember that one? It was a Tonight Show console.
Yeah, it was
at
Johnny
the Tonight
Carson's
Show.
console.
And I don't have it anymore. And so for me, it's like, well, I have this, and I have my mic pre's from, you know, SSL and Neve and all these great mic pre's, and I record in. So that's how I did the record. And of course, I had the luxury of working with Tom for the first song, and the rest of the songs, I would use emulations like this. So the idea of using T-RackS to either think of it as like, well, if I was going to be like Tom Lord-Alge or Nick Davis or some of the old school engineers who would be mixing this on a console, I can actually insert a British channel on each one of my tracks and do it in a similar way that he would, and you would maintain that sound. At the same time, there's so many great modules to explore. You can kind of go with like a characteristic sound of these different console channel strips, or you can experiment with the unique modules in T-RackS. So before we wrap up, why don't we talk about one of your favorites, which would be on the master bus, right?
Yeah, let's play the song. Let's go to Q Hackett to Pieces and just play a minute of that. So again, we want to get back to. So we're going to play a bit of the song, and then open up the one. What you're looking at on the screen, this is T-RackS 1. This plugin is a mother. It's awesome. I want you to know that in this mix is entirely in the box. There is no bus compression on this mix. Any bus compression that's going on right now is happening with this plugin. This is my new fave. I absolutely love it. I'm still getting my hands wet with it, and I'm still experimenting with it and figuring out what it does. But whatever the heck it does, I like it. I like it. This is the first mix I've ever done that doesn't have a bus compressor on it. I swear to God. And when I listen to this versus the album mix I did, I'm just like, oh, can we just put the album out again with this version? So real quick, I'm going to run you through what I know about this plugin, you know, and Dave or Tom might be able to help give you more specifics, but here's the cool bits, okay? So to me, this is your threshold. This is your volume. This thing will make your mix louder than freaking anything. If you know, and the loudness for it matters, okay? And it does it in such a great musical way, okay? Then you got your bass punch. So this is going to add a bit of that bottom end back in, you know, or just a little bit of equalization. Then you have the amount of analog saturation, correct, that you want to add to it. And then the other thing is the transients. Maybe you want to get the mix to be a little spikier. You add the transients.
Like a transient designer kind of thing.
Like a transient designer kind of thing.
It's a multi all-in-one tool, so it's got compression and EQ all together and other things.
This is your low mids. The body, probably around the 300K roughly, 300 cycles. This is your focus, which is the mid-range, and the air, which is the top end. And then my favorite right here, the width. So just when you thought your mix was really sounding good, and I think you really got a handle on your left-right, you put this thing in, and you just dial a couple of notches of that, and it just takes it out of this fucking world. It just takes it to a whole nother place. And I love this plugin. I love it, I love it. If I could marry it, I would. It's that darn good. I really think so. So Tom can probably speak a little bit better on it, or Dave can speak a little bit better on it. But again, this is what I used on the stereo bus. And I just think it's an amazing plugin. So if you want to play another piece?
Well, why don't we play that same section and maybe mess with some of these knobs so they can just hear it.
Go for it. Just actually copy it first. Do a copy so we can get back to where we are.
Oh,
you got the preset?
Yeah.
You know how to do that.
I don't actually do it.
Here.
So you go do it.
I'm going to drive. Oh, fuck, I can't see. You go up here.
Oh, yeah. You mean there. Okay.
Yeah, just do copy. There you go. And then then you can do whatever you want, and then at least we can get back to what we want.
All right.
Go for it.
Without having to reopen. Okay, so We'll mess with this is width all the way down.
Well, no,
all the way up.
Right.
That may be a little bit hard to hear in this environment. This is also with the entire plug-in bypass. And then this is with it back in. This is without. So you see, if you add air, you've got some nice smooth top end. You can add more body. You have a lot of convenient features. More saturation. More compression. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, you can just spank yourself silly with that one. You you can go absolutely nuts with that. But again, it's a tool that gives you the creative flexibility, you know, to be competitive, to make your mixes loud, to make them wide, to make them sound like, to make them sound like my mixes. Oh, well, wait a minute. Maybe
yeah, and if you
maybe they don't want them to sound like my mixes.
No,
okay, to make them sound like my brother's mixes.
Yeah, Tom and Chris Lord-Alge, actually, between the two of them, have probably mixed more records than anybody. But
except
it is really
except for Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
Well,
actually, it is fascinating to hear everybody, all these amazing engineer, producers, mixers, different styles and the way that they approach things. So if you're interested in that and you want to hear more, you can go to ikmultimedia.com. You can go to the IK YouTube channel where we take this song actually more and talk about the guitars, the keyboards, the vocals, and how he processes that as well. And you also can download the presets for free. So anyway, give it up for Tom Lord-Alge. Thank you very much for coming. T-RackS 5.
We want to take a question or two? Do anybody have any?
Yeah,
Do we have time for
we have
questions?
A little time for a question?
We got a couple minutes? Does anybody have any questions? Can I have that mic for a second?
I can yell.
Well,
I was going to say, when you put an effect like this on your tuba, do you print that, or do you take it off when you send it to master?
okay, so I've figured out a way now what I do, because remember, I'm running through an analog console. Okay, so what I do is I actually create an aux, right? And I have the inputs that I normally print to. I put that in and I monitor through it. Okay, what I found though in my system, there's a little bit of latency. So again, I listen to it, I make some adjustments. You know what I mean? If I need to do a lot of moves, I'll have to come back so that they're in real time because of the latency. But yes, I put this, and then what I'll do is I'll print the mix without it, and then I'll commit with it. I'll make a version, I'll put it in as a plug-in, I'll commit the mix, and that's what I sent to my client. Because, well, look, the clients, we all know, the clients they need to hear a finished version. I love this guy, and I love his shirt. But we need to send out mixes that sound finished, okay? And this is part of it, And they did such a great job with this plugin that it's finally, now I have one, that I have a little preset in there and I just adjust for each mix, that I put it through the mix and it makes my fantastic mix freaking shine. And then I send it out to my clients and they're like, that sounds amazing. Do we even need it mastered? And I'm like, no, I'll charge you extra. But yeah, it's awesome. But yeah, I monitor through it. Again, because of the latency on my particular system, sometimes I have to, switch it off and do the moves and then listen again. But it's great to be able to monitor through it and make the adjustments because you will make different adjustments if you're listening through it. Following me? So, any other questions?
Yeah, so and that was similar to my question, because I'm always struggling with how much to do on the master bus before sending it to mastering versus what the client gets.
Okay.
So I'd be curious to know your thoughts and just how you approach that.
That's a great question. So I do this I use this on, first of all, I will make my 96 version and send this out to mastering. Mastering engineer needs to have the version that the client approved. okay? But I will also have a version that doesn't have it on. This gives the mastering engineer the opportunity and the ability to make it better. Now, he may just take this version and do his thing to it. It's his choice. But I always give the mastering opportunity, because again, I'm hiring a mastering engineer based on his talent. So I want to make sure that I give him both. So, but this one always goes out to the client. Anybody else?
So when you send it out without it, do you purposely try to leave any dB of headroom?
Yes. Yes, so when I print 96, I mastered a 90, I have a totally separate 96K rig, and when I master it out, when I print to that rig, I make sure I leave headroom. It's not, it doesn't look like a brick wall. I'm banging, I probably have 2 or 3 dB of headroom. You know what I mean? This gives, again, I've seen people send out mixes to a mastering engineer, and the thing's at top of the mark, and the mastering engineer's like, what the hell do you want me to do with this? So again, remember, if you can afford a mastering engineer and you're in that realm, remember that this guy is the finishing product and he brings something to the table, just like a mixer, like myself. So let him have the space to do what he needs to do. That doesn't mean you can't make a listening copy with the one. I recommend it. My clients, they need to hear this before it goes to mastering. And sometimes they'll use it. They won't even send it to mastering. They'll use what I've sent them. But this gives your mix that pro edge. This is like, man, how'd you get it so loud? And then you'll go, dude, it's IK Multimedia, the one. And they'll be like, what? You know what I mean? This thing is brilliant. So I highly recommend it. Thank you all. Thank you for wearing the NAMM shirt. Gotta love it. My favorite album in the world. And thank you, IK Media, for making these wonderful plugins, and for allowing Dave and I to come up here and discuss our nerdy way of making records and using plugins. And thanks again for all you coming. Thank you.